This week on London Real, we have Adam Scorgie and Brett Harvey, creators of the culture high.
We've clearly seen with drug laws that there is one law for the rich and one law for everybody else. If harm is the government's concern, well then there's a lot more things that need to be taken off the table.
Because marijuana is the one thing that literally touches every single aspect of things that are messed up.
You can beat an addiction. I have one of my best friends that has done it and he's extremely successful now. But you can never beat a conviction. This is a film where if you miss 2 to 3 minutes of some nuances in what somebody's saying, you're missing a vital piece. The Union was discovered, spread across the world because of the internet. The culture high was demanded and funded by the internet. Brett put together as a director is a special film. It's on October 17th. It is going to be available to the world on Vimeo. Oh, you got to cut it down to 90 minutes. And I was with Brett and I fought. And I'm like, no, I'm not fucking cutting it down to 90. They're like, no, but that'll sell easier for TV and this and that. I'm like, fuck it then. We'll go right to the internet.
London Real presents Adam Scorgie and Brett Harvey, the culture high.
If Snoop asks you to smoke, I'm pretty sure I'm going to inhale.
You know, it's very rare in life that we get to see something from its creation to its application and then to its finalization. And that was something that I've been super lucky to be a part of, and that thing is called the culture high. It's the creation of Adam Scorgie and Brett Harvey, and it's the sequel to a movie called The Union, The Business of Getting High, that came out in 2007, was a huge hit. It featured at the time Joe Rogan talking about marijuana in a way that no one had really ever heard. And it was a worldwide sensation, uploaded legally and illegally all over the web. And for a long time, Adam and Brett were asked to do a sequel, and they didn't want to do it because they didn't know if there was anything more to talk about. And they finally were persuaded due to a Kickstarter campaign funded by you guys to the tune of $250,000 that made this production a reality. And 1 year ago, I had the pleasure of meeting Adam, and he spoke to us at London Real about his ideas for the culture high. He was in town to do interviews with Richard Branson, with Annie Michon, with Graham Hancock, with Professor David Nutt. This is like a laundry list of our former guests. And he was very excited about the movie. And a couple weeks ago, he came back almost exactly 1 year later, to show us the finished product of the culture high. We had him back on the show. I went to the premiere. It was just absolutely amazing and fantastic. It was 2 hours of so much information in your dome. I think they had 30 or 40 people they interviewed, including big names like the ones I mentioned. And they really tried to put in perspective how, the war on drugs and even the prohibition of marijuana is really symbolic of so many problems in the world and in the USA, from the criminal system to the treatment of rich and poor are treated differently when it comes to the war on drugs, to so many other topics. And this movie's fascinating. It's a real eye-opener, and I was very impressed, and I'm just so excited for these guys. Adam and Brett are they're just some of the nicest, warmest guys. They're some of the most grateful individuals I ever met. And quite honestly, you just want to help them. You just want to see them kick ass. And I don't think it's just me. I think everyone involved wanted to as well, including the famous people they interviewed like Snoop Dogg, Wiz Khalifa, Richard Branson, who most people are kind of surprised that, Richard Branson is talking about marijuana legalization and those implications. So it's just fantastic. And on top of all that, you have the opportunity right now to watch the film and to, help pay for the creation of such great filmmaking. And rarely do we get an opportunity where you can do that right now. Usually you have to wait, and it comes on iTunes, and the DVD comes later, and you get it in Australia and the UK later, and blah, blah, blah. But, as of the 17th of October, you can download it from Vimeo now in HD. I just bought my copy. It's like $12 to do, and you can click and get a full 3 gig HD version, like right on your computer and watch it. I was rewatching mine even though I was at the premiere, and I'm going to play it later for my family and all my friends when they come over. And I highly encourage you to check it out. If you click right here on a link, It'll take you to our site where there's a Vimeo banner, and you can buy it right now. I encourage you to. Adam's been really cool by giving 10% off to all the London Reelers. Use the promo code LondonReel, no space, and you get 10% off. And this way, the filmmakers get 90% of the revenues. So it's really big, and it means that if this works out, there's going to be more movies from these guys. And as opposed to going through iTunes, where they take a third or a half, and then the distributor takes another third, like, if there's a certain number of downloads here that aren't even a lot, 20, 30,000, they can really make this film, break even, and maybe even make a little bit of money, God forbid, that they can use to probably pay themselves a back salary. So really excited. I hope that you will get on board and just purchase a copy, just to kind of give a shout out to them. And I think it's important to support these filmmakers. And this is the one time not to do a torrent on this movie. I think this is the time to just make your vote with your money and pay them. So appreciate it if you do that. Big shout out to those guys. I think you're gonna love this episode. I feel really privileged that I got to interview them both because they're both great talkers, and it's almost like this episode is great to watch along with the film, because you get to see what they were thinking when they created it. So big shout out and big love to Adam and Brett, and it's just a real honor to be part of this whole process and go to their premiere and all that good stuff. So there you go. That's this week. You've probably been watching me and my continuing quest for the muscle up. Now, some of you have come up to me and congratulated me on the muscle up, but I haven't got it yet. I have things that look like a muscle up, or someone's pushing me in the muscle up, but I'm still working on it. And that is thanks to the guys at Monkey Nutrition. They are supporting me with my supplements for this quest for a 40-something-year-old man to get his belly over a bar. And I'm using the Primal 26 protein powder. It's some of the best on the market, and I use it 3 times a week after my lifting sessions and my muscle up sessions. And I highly encourage you to pick that up. You can click on the link, you go straight to the page. We gave away hundreds of ebooks and some Primal 26 last week. Thanks so much for being a part of that. If you still want to get a copy of that ebook, you can actually click on now and pick one up yourself. Just give them your email and you get it. Lots of great information. So big thanks to those guys. We're going to have another giveaway coming up next month, and more exciting things. And come on, man, get your nutrition sorted, get that muscle up. Don't let this old man show you up when it comes to the gym. So that's it. I keep predicting the last day of summer here on London Reel, but it's sunny. It's like 20-something degrees this weekend. So I don't know what they say about London weather. I think it's all perspective. If you are coming to our website at londonreel.tv, it's beautiful. And I always say you only get one chance to make a first impression online, and that starts with your website. And ours is brought to you by the guys at Squarespace. It's an all-in-one platform to create your own website or online portfolio. They've got a new version now that just came out that's even better than the previous one, more functionality, and they just came out with a beautiful video with the free climber, Alex Honnold, and he uses Squarespace, and he's climbing Yosemite Mountain in this beautiful film that you can click on here and go watch. And I was just so impressed. I just love how Squarespace gives back to people like him, people like us, and support our show. And they're just a great startup and a great company, and they have a sick product. So I'm about to start a site for my girlfriend for her cooking, and you can start for like $8 a month. You can make your own logo. You can do so much stuff. So go to Squarespace, use the code London, and get 10% off, and give them a shout out and let them know what you're thinking. Also, you can see this beautiful shirt I have on here. London Reel, are you kidding me? And you can pick that up on that Squarespace website. Click on the gear, and you can get this. You can get hoodies. Everyone's wearing these. Sully Breaks was wearing one when he interviewed me last week. You can get coffee cups, and we're gonna have more stuff coming up in the future. So pick that stuff up. And this is it. Walking through a beautiful church here in London today. I'm gonna finish off this episode and give my big thanks and shout out to the guys at Bulletproof. And if you're not familiar, Bulletproof is a coffee that's free of molds and toxins. Good start. Mix it up with some grass-fed butter, yummy, and then add in the secret ingredient, the brain octane oil. I gave a bottle of this away to our guest next week. Her name is Aya Mayar. She's got like 40 million views on her YouTube videos. She's huge and she loves it. She tweeted me the next day. She's like, I'm in, I love Bulletproof, I'm done. So it's not just me that's crazy. Everyone is believing this and drinking it. It's part of my daily nutrition. Get your Bulletproof coffee up in you. And there's more. There's all sorts of other fantastic, interesting products on their website. And the book is coming, The Bulletproof Diet. Yes, you can click here and pre-order it on Amazon. They're selling them like hotcakes. If you click now, you get a bunch of free videos right away sent to your email. So go ahead and do that. It's going to come out in December, and we're just sending a big message to the world that we're all going to get bulletproof, and we're going to stop doing those silly things, like eating sugar and toxins and gluten and all that nonsense. So very excited for them. And again, big supporters of our show, and it really sends a message out to them when you check out their products. So we appreciate that. Let them know London Real sent you, and it keeps us being able to make these fantastic shows for you. And that's it, man. It's a wonderful Friday here in London. I can't complain. I got a lot to be grateful for as far as the people I'm meeting. If you want to hear some tech, we just had the guys from Uber in London yesterday, and we asked them all sorts of hard questions about what they're trying to do, what they're doing with the $1 billion they just raised, what their plans are for the future of transport. So check that out at Silicon Reel. And that's it. I've got my interview where I sat in the guest chair coming up, where Sully asked me questions for 2 hours. It got really personal. I talked about some things that I've never talked about before. I've never told anyone in my life. And it's a little scary, but fuck it. I'm gonna roll. It's London Real, so I guess I gotta be real too. So that's happening. I'm going up to see the $50 billion man, Dan Pena, in 2 weeks. And well, that'll be interesting. Yeah, someone's gonna die, probably, either him or me. No, but it could get ugly or it could get pretty. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited. And that's it. If you want to send me a message, it's brian@londonreal.tv. And now I leave you with the fabulous guys on a fabulous film called The Culture High. Here we go. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guests today are Mr. Adam Scorgie and Brett Harvey, who are the creators of the film The Culture High, which premieres here in London at the Raindance Film Festival tomorrow. I'm going to be there with my whole crew. We're very excited. It's been 1 year since Adam was here to talk about the film. You were over here shooting for the film, and now it's all happening. It's a fascinating process to watch. A little background on these guys. Adam Scorgie is an independent filmmaker known for producing the documentaries The Union, The Business Behind Getting High, I Am Bruce Lee, The Good Son, and Ice Guardians. Brett Harvey is the writer, director, and cinematographer of both The Union and The Culture High. Adam tells me you are meticulous behind the scenes, spending like hours getting the lighting right, getting the camera angles right. And I think this is a part that people don't always notice when you go to watch a documentary and you get pulled into the documentary. It's because of all of those little tricks, It's really bringing the person out, and it's not just a hand cam. It's all the audio, it's the different camera angles, it's everything. So thanks so much for being here as well. Guys, welcome to London Real.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, man, I'm so pumped to be back. It's crazy to see that it's almost exactly 1 year since we were here before. And I was telling this story because I just came from Reykjavik, Iceland, right? Because we screened at that film festival as well. And two festivals that we really, really wanted to get into was Raindance and Reykjavik. And you have this vision when you're making this film of like, okay, wouldn't it be amazing to go there and do that? Iceland was on my bucket list to go visit. Premiering in London at Raindance after we did the show and everyone we worked with here, I was like, oh, it'd be such... And then to actually see it happen and come together, I've been trying to just take the moment in and be like, that, just whatever happens from now moving forward, that's fucking cool, right? Like, we had this vision. I wanted to premiere. Like, I was just praying, and I was messaging Raindance, and I was messaging Riff. I was sending them both messages with the teaser saying, hey, is this a film would you be interested in? Trying to get to know the programmer, so it wasn't just a 5,000 submissions on their desk that they're trying to sort through and pick. So to actually see it coming together, and then tomorrow, sitting down with everybody from London Real that was here and like in the theater with everybody around, I can't wait. It's my favorite time, so I'm super excited.
Yeah, I hope you guys can take a minute and kind of enjoy this. I know you've been running around for the last year, making this film. But there's going to be a lot of people watching this show that want to know how to make documentaries, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing you guys do is you actually make things happen. I mean, you were here a year ago and you came back to deliver a film. So that's big that you guys made that happen. And a year's not a long time. And so I think that's one thing people should learn from you guys is that you guys deliver. And then second of all, I just got to say,
you guys have such a positive energy about you, and meeting you, Adam, it's like all I want to do is help you guys succeed. And I think everyone you meet must feel that same way. And I don't really know Adam that well, but I feel like I've known you for a long time. And every time I interact with you, it's nothing but awesome. And so like all we want to do is help you. And I think that's been true about everybody you've met, whether it's Rogan and all these other people, fantastic guys you've had on your show. Do you guys realize this?
Man, you're getting me emotional. It's something that I think there's something to be said about that with the podcast world, though, as we were kind of talking before we started, is that there's an honesty that can come through here, and you want to see that. And even people in the film that Brett wanted to have, like we're both avid podcast listeners, and we listen to certain people, and you hear this honesty, and you're like, I want to work with them. I think we'd be like-minded, right? Like because these interviews aren't these bullshit media ones where they can put on a facade and have these generic fucking answers. You get people there, and then you want to help and connect. So it's funny that you say that. I can't even put back into words at how cool that is that you feel that way, because it's something that we feel about that with a lot of the people we work with, right? Most of the people we worked with or interviewed or were fortunate enough to sit down with, you want to work with them again, and you want to see them succeed. And there's no like, ooh, if their project's doing better than ours or something. I think it's awesome. Like, good, that's another homie that we met like that. So it's so cool that you feel that way.
I think it's critical too. It was critical in the Culture High. It was critical in the Union. Was every interview almost led to the next interview. Like the reason we got the people we did was because of our approach to the interviews. And in the Union, we had people who were sketched out by us wanting to do the interview. And then by the end of the interview, they were like, oh, you got to talk to this person. You got to talk to that person. Yeah. Example in this one was Gabor Mate. We finished an interview with him. He recommends Ed Burns, co-creator of The Wire, who has more experience in the field. He's been to Vietnam. He was in Baltimore
undercover narcotics agent
in the kind of range of what The Wire was based on.
It's his voice on your trailer, right? That's him, yeah? Okay.
Yes.
Deadly in the film.
And we won't say what he says, but he closes out like he is some of the most powerful moments. Yeah. And because he's a professional writer, he really knows how to deliver his talking points, right? With pauses that make you think, and a power thing. Think about it and this, and like so many people are like, that guy's my fucking hero. But he had no interest in doing an interview until Gabor said, these guys are asking the right question and they're approaching this the right way. Literally, his email said, if Gabor says I should do it, then I will. That was the only reason. I have the email of why. He said, like, because we said, like, hey, do you want to, when this comes out, do you want to premiere, do you want to copy? He's like, not into any of that. I work in Hollywood. I know what that, in HBO, I have no interest in that. I strictly did this because Gabor said, and then after asking, afterwards, he loved the questioning and the approach we were coming, and kudos to Brett, like 10 or 15 times when we were interviewing people, there'd be questions because Brett would do such good homework on these people that we'd ask and they'd be like, whoa, you're bringing up stuff from like 10 years ago. And they're like, man, good homework, right? Like they were impressed. The interviewer was like, I can't believe you did that much work on me. So then you got them to open up in a way that you wouldn't normally get, because Brett just is so thorough. And actually he gave me shit when we were here in London because like some of the questions, they would seem kind of the same to me, and I would, I'm trying to keep eye contact, because something I do when I do an interview is when they're saying something deep, I'm not looking down at the next question, because then the guy can be like, oh, you don't give a shit about what I'm saying.
It's a bit like that in podcasting too, yeah.
So I'm sitting here looking at the guy, right? And then, but I try to know where my place is in case he cuts off cold. And then I'm like, oh, okay. I want to just keep it flowing. And there'd be times I'd look and I'd kind of read and be like, okay, that's the same one. And I'd go, and Brett gave me shit when we were here, and I'm glad he did, where he's like, Adam, they may sound the same, but I'm trying to get something out of them. And even a great interviewer can't always do it the first time. Sometimes you ask it from kind of a slightly different perspective, and then he'll give the gold he really wanted to do.
Well, sometimes they're just not even like, when you're into the pressure of an interview, sometimes you just don't even get out the answer the way you want it. So it's almost like a second chance to get some of that stuff.
Yeah, and you need them to deliver it the perfect way so it can be right in.
Well, at least I need it to be there. Sometimes, so in the sense of, it's critical when you have so much information and that you're trying to cover, that you have the elements that when you need to cut out this chunk here, and then you need to jump over here and grab this bit, you just got to make sure that bit's there. And a lot of times in their answer, they'll get caught up in the momentum of whatever that thought is, and they have actually several other things that are critical points of it. So you got to come back to it so that they can actually hit on those down the road. And then you cut out a big chunk in the middle, but then you're able to bring it all together and fit it into 2 hours when you're covering a subject that goes from pharmaceuticals to undercover cops to presidents.
And we're going to get to that editing process. You know, for people that don't know, I want to talk about this film because I still don't know exactly what it's about. I can't wait to see it tomorrow. But you guys came over here specifically to come to Britain. And now when you did The Union, you didn't do any shooting over here. Remember you said you really wanted to come over here, and you were talking to Richard Branson, Annie Michon, Professor David Nutt, Howard Marks, Graham Hancock, most of those people we've had on the show. There's a trend here. Why was it important to come to the UK?
Because of some of those people that you mentioned, right? They're really, and we were trying to get a much more global perspective. Although when you see the film tomorrow, you'll see like it's heavily American driven too, because two reasons. One is that's the American market for film and television, but two, when it comes to drug policy, America has been driving it in the UN summit for years. They have been the driving force pushing on other countries to adopt their policies when a lot of other countries really didn't have some of these drug issues that the United States did. But you know, when you're breaching foreign policy, then you can not get foreign aid. So a lot of countries are kind of like, well, we didn't really have a marijuana issue, but if, you know, we have a big disaster and the States won't give us foreign aid because we're not adopting this, then we're going to adopt it. So, you know, when Brett was looking at how to make it different and we looked at the other pot docs out there, that was something that made it different. And Brett, and you'll see in the film, and I promised Brett I wouldn't give any spoilers on how for tomorrow.
We'll see how that goes.
But he really did a great job of putting this global perspective by adding, you know, the Britain part and you just there's so many great speakers coming out of Britain that we thought weren't getting over here. They were huge, but kind of in North America, they weren't getting all the information through podcasts and through our social media sites. We were seeing them all the time, but they weren't kind of out in the mainstream. Like, it's amazing how many people in North America don't even know that Portugal decriminalized all drugs over 12 years ago, right? People are like, even when I was on the CBC, they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, like there's actually been huge studies examining the Portugal experiment and everything, and just no idea. So it was interesting for us on how to make it bigger, more global, connect to a larger audience.
UK is the one that we always hear about over there, though, too.
Well, there's so many great personalities here, like, you know, Howard Marks in itself. He's just a kind of a legend.
He's a documentary.
You know, he can't travel to the U.S. If he ever lands on U.S. soil, he'll be arrested because of his federal warrant. So everyone's always like, how come he hasn't been on Rogan? There's a good reason he hasn't been on Rogan.
Probably one of the nicest guys we've met, too. Unbelievable.
Yeah, we had two.
Did you have him on?
Yeah, we had 2 hours. This is fantastic. Sure. And Professor David Nutt, another, you know, very idiosyncratic type of guy with a real history, a real opinion. You know, he's a fantastic perspective.
Critical story too, like how that story hasn't received more attention is just beyond me. Like I barely heard about it, and it was only because it was online, which is one of the big things in our doc that we end up talking about as the shift takes place, how online, you know, news plays into it. But as far as our media, I didn't hear a single story about that, and that's a pretty big story when somebody's getting fired. For that reason. I
know, and well, you can go look at it, but I know he compares ecstasy to equity, which is, you know, equity is riding horses, and more, you know, I try to explain this to some very intelligent people, like more people die every year riding horses than taking ecstasy, so that makes that more dangerous, and people are like, what are you talking about? Ecstasy is more dangerous. I'm like, no. If you look at the numbers, and so, anyways, I won't go on about that, but look that up.
Well, even just I bring up when people, if harm is the issue, because that's something, it's still when I do media interviews, people are like, well, what about the harm? Do you think you're advocating for children and this and that? I'm like, listen, if harm is the reason that we're going to make something illegal or legal, then pretty much the world diet needs to be put into prohibition tomorrow, because we eat so much dog shit food and we feed it. I look at what's fed to my children: cereal with milk that's got artificial sugar put into it and hormones and stuff like that, and then a bowl filled of sugar shit that we can't even identify. They say it's corn and stuff, but like, you tell me what Cap'n Crunch is, right? Or Fruit Loops, what the fuck those actually are, right? And they'll put all this stuff, garbage, and we feed that to our kids from a young age, and we feed them a whole bunch of shit that now all the evidence is coming up that exacerbates cancer, it gives malignant growths in the body, it does all this stuff. Like, if harm is the government's concern, well, then there's a lot more things that need to be taken off the table if they really are concerned about the children.
I think it goes so far beyond that, though. Like, the second part to that question to me is like, okay, so you're saying you don't want them to do this because it's going to harm them. So the route you take to prevent them from harming themselves is to harm them even further. So you go, okay, well, because we think you're hurting yourself, we're going to throw you in a cell and take away your ability to go to school, take away possibly your job, take away all these things from you because we're worried that you might harm yourself. It's such an odd, it's a simple concept.
And it'll cost
too.
us 150
And it'll
grand.
cost
Yeah,
everybody
and it'll
else
cost
money.
it is when you start
It's backwards thinking. It's completely backwards.
Brett, you hit the nail on the head. Like, that is something else that I bring up too in these things, is just being like, yeah, like how we ever thought that was a way that we were going to, help with addiction, is incarcerate people, prevent them from rights to an education, prevent them from traveling, prevent them from getting back into the workplace. I've had my family and friends, lots, have addiction problems. And I couldn't imagine if they came from, like, luckily we had a very supportive family that had some financial backing to help them get out. And now one of my best friends has been like 8 years sober. He's an insurance salesman. He's doing great. He's got a fantastic life. But I couldn't imagine, like, even he says, he's like, man, I couldn't imagine being on the wrong side of the law, getting caught one of those times I was partying. Then he's like, I would have never been able to get the insurance job I have now. I would have never been able to get my life back on track. I wouldn't have been able to get out of it. It's hard enough when you're struggling with addiction and mental illness and, which should be a health issue, to then have criminalization to try to get out of that, right? Especially if you're a minority, because as we've seen, and a quote from the movie is that we've clearly seen with drug laws that there is one law for the rich and one law for everybody else when it comes to drug laws. Because we celebrities busted all the time and it's like a big joke, right? But that's not a joke for minorities or people in impoverished areas. Not a joke for them. They get caught, federal record. They don't have a lawyer. They don't know how to plead. I mean, I've had some, times where I've had to go to court, unfortunately, as we've had some of my previous experience we've talked, where it's a confusing system and it's super expensive. So when you're going up there, you don't know what you're doing. Like, I just recently had a car incident, a road rage incident, where I got into an argument with someone, and they wanted me to plead before I'd even seen the incident report. They're like, how do you plead today? And I was like, luckily I had a good friend of mine that just finished law school, so he was guiding me through this. Right, and he's like, you're not pleading today. He's like, you're going to say, I'm going to ask for more time. I want to see the incident report. I'm going to ask for alternative measures. And then the incident report, when you read it, is nothing. They said I threw glass bottles and that the girl got cut, and it was totally not what happened, right? And then the guy had 2 previous road rage incidents, and he had all this other stuff where I was like, whoa. And they wanted me to plead before I even got to see this. Right? So if you, I can't imagine if you're someone that really doesn't understand, you get caught for the same thing that so many other people have tried, including former presidents, former prime ministers, celebrities, and you don't have someone guiding you, or you don't even have good influence in your life, parent, coach, uncle, relative, you're fucked. You're going to get that on your record. And like I said in our first film, The Union, you can beat an addiction. I have one of my best friends that has done it, and he is extremely successful now. But you can never beat a conviction. That is going to be on there every time you travel. Even if you get a pardon, it's going to come up. It's going to show up on the computer. And I've met several people that have beaten their addictions and are huge contributors to society, great people. So the fact that we ever thought that harming someone in order to help them, we're going to help prevent you from harming yourself, therefore we're going to harm you, is so ludicrous.
Let's talk about The Union, because this is a film you guys both made 7 years ago. I don't think you ever expected, it to be welcomed and promoted as much as it has. No. It was called The Union, the business behind getting high. I remember hearing your stories about it and what you recognize kind of going on in Canada. I think you originally were going to do it kind of in first person, and then later you did the voiceover. It became huge. It became, online. It was adopted. There was...
we have birds in the background.
For a minute. You had a parade of squirrels.
I think on Netflix you had like 750,000 ratings, which is probably up, millions and millions of views on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And then you guys were talking about doing not a sequel, but a follow-up. And when we were here last time, you said the Culture High was going to further investigate how the modern day prohibition of marijuana has a grasp on our society as a whole. Is that still what the movie is about, or did it change? Do we need to talk about The Union before we talk about the Culture High?
It's all it could be about, to be honest, for the Culture High, because I didn't want to do number 2. That was the hardest thing about doing the Culture High, was the stress of going, fuck, I already did this film. I thought I did everything that could be done as far as packing it into a 2-hour thing to talk about marijuana prohibition and the positives and the negatives. There's very few positives.
And you guys really explained how, I just started watching it again and I had to turn it off before you guys came over. But, you started off with the whole history of marijuana, which I don't know if it had ever been put in a film, so well or so concisely. It was played, in front of the Canadian Parliament. This was a real cultural education about what was going on. And so you put it out there, and then people want another movie, or you're thinking...
That was, like Brett said, neither of us really wanted, because when I'd go in the room to pitch to try to get us other projects, and we're all trying to, because the union, as I explained the last time, we won't get into it again, but I mean, yes, it became a cultural phenomenon, seen millions of times. It's viewed all over the world. It became the tool that like everybody looking for the truth about drug policy and stuff latched onto and was sharing in communities. But we all lost our ass on that movie, right? Like we were bankrupt and selling things, and I still haven't paid my dad back for what he put into it. Still owe him $60,000. So we didn't want to do another one, right? But literally it was like every time people just kept saying, you got to do another one, you got to do another one, you got to do it. And then policies changing all over, and like neither Brett or I wanted to do it, but the push from the audience, and it's kind of what Brett put into the film, and not is that the internet is changing this, right? The union was discovered, spread across the world because of the internet. The culture high was demanded and funded by the internet.
Like YouTube had just started around then.
Yeah, it was just hitting its peak when we were coming out through festivals.
Yeah, right. And then it actually, I think it was one of the big reasons that the union did so well, though, was like without that online presence, I bet you wouldn't have heard of us.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, like it was all through online, people sharing, people wanting to get the message out that came. And then the culture high, like the difference with the culture high, for me personally, to make it different, it had to go beyond just the marijuana prohibition at that point. Whereas the first one kind of looks at the marijuana prohibition, does this make sense? We have to tackle that a little bit in this one because we can't expect that everybody's seen the first one. That was one of the hard things, but it had to go far beyond because it's like most of our people that are going to watch it have seen the union. So this time it's like, okay, we get that and we kind of touch on that. But now how is society set up? How is society structured that allows something like marijuana prohibition to continue the way it is with the absurdity that everybody, just about everybody, recognizes? And so this one is it's a view of society and breaks down society and how it functions, and it's just through the lens of marijuana. Because marijuana is the one thing that literally touches every single aspect of things that are messed up in the structure of how we deal with medicine, how we deal with policing ourselves, how we deal with voting for presidents,
racial bias,
the media, the momentum of the television, like news networks like CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all of them.
How do you guys make a movie about all this stuff in 2 hours?
Well, it starts
because Brett's a fucking genius. I'm going to say
100-hour film
because he's too nice. And honestly, I've watched it now 3 times in the big screen, and you hate to say this about your own movie, but it's fucking amazing what Brett put together. Like, it is way deeper than the compliments we've been getting, even by like activists
He's
that have been
biased
in it
at all.
Yeah, not biased at all. We're really proud of what Brett did. Like, there's a lot of stress that I don't think, and I'm not here to cry about it either, but I mean, we were talking about it last night where both of us, like the main, I mean, and there's so many people that help. The Kickstarter people help us find it. Like, I'm not trying to say, but
it's what got us through.
Yeah, like, it is these positive messages and coming on shows like yours and getting the feedback and stuff is like, literally, we read those messages and it's like, okay, that's why we do it again, because it's so hard. And what Brett put together, I watched it the other day. I was in Reykjavik and I thought, okay, I'll just watch like the first 20 minutes and I'll go outside, have a beer, and come back for the Q&A. And then I'm getting caught up in the Gabor Marte addiction part, and then I'm getting into this, and like I'm even there with another festival director who runs a documentary program in Edmonton. He watches thousands of documentaries every year, and he was looking at me just going like, oh, like he was just kept going like, that's fucking brilliant the way he put that together. And I was thinking the same thing, but it sucks because I'm a producer on it, so I'm gonna be like, yeah, it's fucking brilliant, but I'm admiring, even though Brett's one of my best friends, I know how hard it was, and I know these sections and how many hours of footage and how you're trying to relay a message in a short snippet that's covering such tenuous issues, right? Whether it's addiction or it's corruption of law enforcement or it's, societal wrongs that just we have as a species, and how he connects that to marijuana and why we still have these prejudice of my team versus your team. And he fucking crushes it. And you'll see tomorrow, like Brett does. He's highly underrated for what he does. For how hard this was. No, I'm being fucking honest. For what we had to do and the pressures and doing it and what he managed to put together in this 2 hours. And that's why when we were done, regular people in the industry were so used to this, they're so used to this just way of things are done for movies, right? So there was like, okay, you got to cut it down to 90 minutes. And I was with Brett and I fought, and I'm like, no, I'm not fucking cutting it down to 9. They're like, no, but that'll sell easier for TV and this and that. I'm like, fuck it then. We'll go right to the internet. Because that's where this has come. The first film was discovered through the internet. This one was financed and supported through the internet. So if we have to, and no one will give us international deals and they want to cut it and change it and fuck it up, no, we'll just put it, and that's actually what we're doing, is on October 17th, it is going to be available to the world on Vimeo. Nowhere in the world, everywhere in the world can get it at the same time. No more of United States gets it for a year. They're going to wait for some fucked up release plan by somebody here. Then they're going to charge an inflated price, but you won't be able to get it till then. And then the DVD will take 6 months to come out. The whole world is asking. We're getting emails right now from Philippines, Netherlands, Estonia, Iceland, all over the place. So like somewhere like Iceland that only has 320,000 people for their entire population, they're never going to get a DVD deal there. Right. So what are they going to do? They're going to steal it. And I don't blame them. I met a whole bunch of people that came to our screening, like 15 of them, that were big fans of the union. They're all like, yeah, we stole it. And I was like, well, I don't blame you. We never got a DVD deal here. How else would you get it, right? For 320,000 people, a documentary would be lucky to sell for $1,000 anyway.
Right.
So our thing is put it for a fair price. And you know tech, right? So like Vimeo's model is like, listen, most people don't want to have to break through a wall to get content they want. They're willing to support it if you give them a door.
Yeah,
right?
and give them quality content. Yeah.
And give it for a fair price.
Yeah, for fair price, right.
Right? You don't have distributors. Vimeo gives the filmmaker 90%.
Okay.
iTunes
It's
takes
insane.
35. The
It's
distributor
insane.
takes another 35. So, and then there's like a 5% processing, and then they charge you marketing and all this other. So you have to charge $19.99.
So even
just
on
for
iTunes, you only
For
see
you ever
20%
seen
of
anything?
that, or?
Oh,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
crazy.
Literally, you get,
Okay, 20.
iTunes takes 35,
Right.
then your distributor takes 35 after that, and then there's like a 5% processing fee they slip in there.
Okay.
So you have to charge $19 just to get $1.
Okay.
So then we're like, oh, well, why don't we just put it online for free for a fair price worldwide, like $5 rental, $13. Well, because we have a North American distributor, they determine we have to kind of match their prices to start. So when it goes on October 17th, it's going to be $12.99.
Okay.
Kind of like a theatrical price so that people can still do the Tug campaign and everything we're doing, right?
Right, and I want to talk about that. So Vimeo, October 17th, I can go to Vimeo and plug in, give my credit card, and watch this thing.
Boom.
Yeah.
And it'll be like $12 or $13 US.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
can pay for it over
Yeah,
here. with my
yeah.
credit
So they'll
card.
be equivalent. So it's not going to, because that was something I was really on them about. I like that we have the control where I'm like, no, I don't want it to be 13 pounds for people, because that's a ripoff, right? Like I want it to be a fair price to encourage people not to download, right? And they're like, no, it'll be 12, so then it'll only be like 8 pounds or whatever, right? Like a fair price for the opening, because it's still considered in its because we have a 1-week theatrical in New York and LA, and we have some limited theatricals going across Canada, and then the Tug releases. So that way I was just like, the whole world is messaging me, when can I get it? When can I get it? I was like, fuck, let's just give it to them, right? Like give it to them for a fair price. Of course we know there's still going to be downloads, but we hope through formats like this and other podcasts and stuff we do that people are like, you know what, those are just regular guys like me trying to hustle, creative hustlers trying to find their place in this world. We ain't buying Ferraris with our money. We're paying our families back with our money and buying groceries and fucking diapers. So if you watch it and you hate it and be like, this isn't, I don't blame you if you download it, whatever. But if you watch and you're like, fuck, these guys did do a good job, I think I should support them. Even buy it when it gets a little cheaper, right? If you can't afford the initial one. Although buy it when it's really expensive first, right? But, I get it. Everyone's struggling. We're all hustling. So just, I think giving the world the opportunity to get it for a fair price like that is something. I'm taking a big risk. Our sales agent did not want to do that. And he got really mad. And actually we're separating and I have to do a buyout with him and everything because he did not want to do that. And I just said, listen, I think this is the way it's going.
I'm really glad you're doing that, because if you have to wait and then wait for the DVD and wait to get it in England, and it's like then they go with the pirating route because they really want to see it. But I think if you give them the fair option, like a lot of comedians, and Rogan's releasing his show for $5.
That seems to be the price mark.
Yeah,
too,
that's
right
maybe a
around
market.
$5
That's
mark,
maybe, but like a film.
Well, see, but that's where we wanted to do. Here's how I wanted to start it on October 17th. I wanted to do $5 rental, $9.99 download. You own it, right? And then the DVD extra features are going to be coming out in January, and then we're going to have bundles of where like you can get the union and the full film and the DVD extras for $15.
So there will be a DVD stuff.
There will be a DVD
it's just
stuff
coming out a bit later.
It comes out later, but because in order to get the film financed, we had to pre-sell North America, right? And we can't, like, that distributor is someone that can still. You still can't do this world without distributors, right? If you want to get into the mainstream, like our theatrical release in LA, all these things and in New York, you need them, and they've helped us. They gave us money up front, so they're not all distributors are bad. They did what a lot of other distributors did, and they gave us good money up front. We had to then interim finance that, and you're a finance guy, so you understand. We got the paper
Right.
to then go get it banked,
Right.
but that still got us into production. So they own North American rights, and they said, because they're releasing it on October 17th, match our prices to start, right, and then go with it. So, because I would have liked to have been cheaper to start, but that's, anyone listening, that's why we started at $12.99.
That's a good price point. And anybody listening to this, then you have no excuse. You should go to Vimeo and you should pay for this, because it does trickle down. I mean, you didn't make money off the union, and that's
Still
ridiculous.
owe $60,000.
You still owe money off the union. I mean, and that's ridiculous, because so many people have consumed it and enjoyed it. And so, with something like this, I think it's really important that people, take the extra step and realize you're supporting an artist. I mean, it's a lot like your Kickstarter campaign. I mean, that is real people putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
You guys raised $250,000 on Kickstarter.
Well, and it's important if you want us to keep doing documentaries like this, because there's a point where you get to be like, in my case, 35 years old, and you're going, oh, I got to save some money. I got to have some kind of future here, because otherwise I'm going to be on the street eventually.
No, it's important for people to pay for content and then to realize that's how future content, gets created.
Yeah.
No, exactly, and that's where I'm glad and it says we're taking a big risk, but I really think because the audience was so strong on Kickstarter, and they also get it the same day, right? We have a password. That was the other thing, is Vimeo then provides them with all the passwords, so they get it at the same time too. Because a lot of them were asking, like, well, hey, we paid and you're doing film festivals and stuff. And I was like, listen, if you look at the rewards, right? Some of the rewards for our big Kickstarter pledges was red carpet invites to ticket. So you have to kind of share with everybody, right? And everyone our Kickstarter people have been awesome. Everyone got it. There's been a few people being like, I'm kind of disappointed. These festivals are getting it before we did. I gave them a sneak peek of the trailer 2 months before, because it only released yesterday.
Okay.
And then today internationally on Richard Branson's website was fucking awesome. But I got sidetracked there. But so this way too, Vimeo said, yeah, we'll give a code so you can individually send. So then at the same time that we're all the Kickstarter people, they get it too, which we told them from the beginning. We said, you will get your version when it becomes commercially available, because we had contracts with distributors going in that we had to keep everybody happy.
Okay.
And that's a tough part, right? Is that you have distributors you got to keep happy, interviewees you got to keep happy, producers you got to keep happy, and then the Kickstarter people you got to keep happy. And all this pressure landed on poor Brett's shoulders, where everyone, some people were expecting or are expecting this movie to be the pivotal changing drug policy movie. The pressure on all of us. Brett and I have never, until he gave me shit about the questions here, that I was making mistakes, which was justified. I was being a little lazy, and we were tired, and we were traveling, and I'm glad he did. But we'd never gotten to any in our 8 years until the last few months, just all this stress welling up, where it's and it was just email. Brett said it so good last night. We had a really good heart to heart. We're both almost in tears hanging out the bar, and he was just like, Adam, I said this to my girlfriend. I just said, when me and Adam talk in person, it'll be cool. But right now we're going back in emails, and inflections lost, and we're stressed, and we're all got these deadlines, and we've got, the film's bigger now. We've got theatrical releases in New York and LA. We've got big producers. They're doing big releases. We're dealing with lots of people trying to make them happy, that it's just oh man, there's a lot of things that we were not ready for, that it's put pressure on us and our relationship and the stress. We're really good at making movies, right? And then all this other stuff that comes, you can see why, and I mean in a small way, why big celebrities a lot of time really have troubles when they really blow up, because you're not ready for that kind of fame. And I'm not trying to say
everyone's pulling you different ways.
Yeah, just now it's everyone wants a piece and do this and read my script.
Yeah, you got to start tuning it out. You almost have to start just going, it's it becomes white noise around you, and you just got to kind of focus on what you're doing. Right. Funny enough, with Adam 2 and the release date thing, content-wise, from my perspective, I feel it's critical too, just because a lot of the stories in it was something I was fighting the whole time, where it's just changing so freaking quickly. Everything. It was constant. It was it was swimming up a river while we were doing it, because it was the next day you just edit a piece, and the next day all of a sudden somewhere legalized that hadn't, and there's an extra state now you got to add it to it, or you got to some politician just changed his mind suddenly, and now John McCain's talking about how he thinks it should be legalized, and it's just this constant battle, because I've never experienced something that changes so rapidly.
Wow.
And so now it's okay, we got to get it out so that it can actually be out and doing its thing within the process.
And when did you finish final edit on it?
July we delivered.
Yeah, okay. July we delivered.
So that was when sound mix and color correction and all that.
And what's this movie going to do? Is it going to get people talking? Is it going to change legislation? What do you want it to be doing if you look at this 5 years from now? And what do you want it to do? And what do you realistically think it's going to do?
Open up discussion first off.
Yeah.
I just want people to start thinking, and I want them to start thinking differently than they have. I think with the internet though, it's changed a lot. Like that was another thing. People were so much more educated this time. The first time, like the idea that growers and dealers would want to keep it illegal for profits. It was just like such a mind-bending thing back then. I'm like, really? It was kind of like the whole world turned for people. But this time around, it was just like, oh yeah, of course, it's common knowledge. So that was one of the big
people are way smarter. I mean, definitely our goal has always been, because we're not activists, we're not
far from them.
We just wanted to make great films. That's always been our goal. So we were hoping that it would allow us to do, if we could tackle difficult subjects like this, that we could open the door to do more. Ultimately, that's what we want to do, is just, be able to make a decent living doing great films. Hopefully more documentaries, because we fucking love them, but they're so hard to make for how much work you put in. Like from concept to delivery is 4 years. Right. Yeah. And I mean, if you were to calculate, you're a finance guy, if you were to look at how hard we worked and how much you made, every finance guy in the world would be like, this is a fucking horrible business model. We're getting out of this investment now. Get out. Let's do horror movies with high VFX for $100,000 and sell them for $1 or $2 million. That's the business model we're getting into.
We were joking in the kitchen before that the documentary business is just slightly more intelligent than the podcasting business for returns. But you guys raised $250,000 on Kickstarter, which was huge.
Yeah.
But most people don't understand that the movie costs a lot more than that.
Yes.
I'm
glad you brought that up, because the total budget of the movie is $670,000. And when we went to Kickstarter, that was the gap we needed, right? We had pre-sold Phase 4, we had pre-sold Super Channel, we had tax credits, we had the whole Canadian system, so we had like 400 of it in place, and we needed 190, like it was make or break. So we said, because the audience was the one, we got thousands of emails from all over the world and Facebook messages and everything else, and everyone's like, do another one. So we threw back and said, okay, like if you want it and you want us to buckle down, sacrifice our life and stuff again, you have to show us. And that's what's fucking amazing about today. Like this movie would not exist 10 years ago. No. They did, big time. And it helped in so many ways, because not only did it get us into production, but it also helped us when we'd go to other buyers or to people that said this isn't important. And they'd be like, no, it is important. 3,500 people put their hard-earned cash to say how important it is to them. So don't say this isn't an important issue.
And does that make your job easier when it comes to selling that film?
Well, you're selling it does help, because when you're talking, and here's the thing where it's a film business, right? And it was funny because I just went to a pitch thing today. I was watching for the festival, people pitching their ideas. And you got to remember, the people on the other side of the table are suits. They're looking at this strictly from a business perspective. And every filmmaker thinks they made the best thing ever. And they're passionate about it, and they work. And it is. Making movies is fucking hard. Just as making podcasts is fucking hard. Good content, good people, schedules, this, that, make it look good. So every filmmaker, whoever, when you do something that you're passionate, you're like, man, it's so good, and it's this, and I got this person. But then you're going to someone that has to buy it, and they control the market, and they don't give a shit. They're like, how much did you spend? So, okay, you spent that much money, so we have to manage your expectations, because here's how the market's going to work. Ain't going to work like that. Your film's a drama, acting's great, you have no big names, you're probably not going to make any money. That's the real. You're going to meet someone that really doesn't give a fuck about your project unless they can make money on. That's all they look at it. They look at it just like a bank transaction. They have cut it to a business. The people that seem to make the most money as far as sales in films, that's all they look at it as a business. And then if they get one that actually is really critically acclaimed and everything else too, bonus, right? Hey, this movie was critically acclaimed and it made a fuckload of money. So to go back though to your question, like what do we want to do with the film? I had a really interesting thing, and I was sharing this story with Brett. Is I had a really successful producer, a friend of mine, Gabriel, that has done a lot of great stuff, and he's really able to look at the business, the film world as a business, and do very well for himself. And after the screening, he was like, Adam, brilliant, like your production value, your stories. Like for me, when I'm watching it, as like, I'm not trying to say this as a friend, he was like, when I watched it, I can't tell the difference between you and Michael Moore as far as I don't do docs. To me, they both look same quality. Brilliant story, tackling big subjects, well put together. And then he said something to me at the end. He's like, I'm going to tell you some. First of all, first thing he said is like, as brilliant as I think Brett and you guys did, get out of documentaries because they're too much work. And that was his first thing to me. I was like, well, thank you. I guess that's a compliment. But then later on, he said, you know what? I should take one thing back, Adam. He's like, you have something that you've done that I might never do in my career, is that you have a film that could possibly help change the world. And I was like, Gabe, I don't even like talking about that. It like really freaks me out. Cause that was never our goal, right? Right, Brett? We were just trying to make a great film. And then my other friend that was there, Rocky, said something that was cool. He goes, Adam, listen, you know, we know you're humble and we know you work hard and you don't think about it that way. And he's like, but it's an old Tupac quote that he ripped off. And he said that, you know, because Tupac often talked about changing the world in his music. And he was asked one time, like, well, do you think you're going to change the world? And he says, I know I will not change the world, but my music will spark the mind that will. And when he said that to me, he's like, Adam, that's what your film is going to do. You are not going to change the world. You're a filmmaker. And you gave people a tool. He's like, but trust me, after watching your movie, he's like, you definitely have a film that can spark the mind that will. And I was like, really like, I was like, okay, guys, like, we were at TIFF during all this. And I was like, let's just stop talking about it. Can we just go have a beer? Like, I don't want to think that hard of what because you don't like to say my film is going to do this or it's going to do, because then comes back to the moral of your podcast, right? It's about the journey. If you have an expectation that it's going to do this and it needs to do this or it's going to do that, you're only setting yourself up for failure, because what the union turned out and what we envisioned it, two different things, right? Even the journey we've gone on for the Culture High, it was a little different than what we set out to what Brett delivered, but I liked the way it turned out better. So we just wanted to make a great film, and that I can say, whether it's my film or not, if I'm watching it, what Brett put together as a director is a special film. It is. Like when people say, it is a special film. Out of thousands of docs that are made, there are those that are special that are going to connect, and the Culture Eye is that.
Is there any metric to see whether your film made a difference, like the Parliament plays it in front of the Parliament?
Well, Parliament's inviting us back.
Obama says it was a great movie.
I don't think Obama, after he sees
he's not going to like us in this one.
You had his picture smoking weed on your website for the last couple of years.
We have a little chat in the film about all the presidents in general and the stance and how the system's set up to perpetuate what we've experienced, what the United States has experienced over the years and then has been pushed on everybody else. Like there was a point where Canada was going to legalize, and then the United States came up and said, well, we're going to shut down your borders if you do that. Like they've been a big influence on how this goes down over the years, and the hypocrisy of the people in charge and how they run it and what they think's appropriate, and how if their actions were accounted for the same way, they would not be in the position they are. That gets addressed in
Watch the movie
too.
for this.
Yeah.
The thing is, there is no metric for you guys. It's just you're going to hope that everyone watches the movie.
Exactly.
It's going to be a slow movement, just like all of these information avenues.
Although that's picking up quick now. Those states are starting to crumble.
Right.
That's going.
It's interesting how you said how when you're editing it, the whole thing's changing. And I mean, in a year from now, in 5 years from now,
day by day. That was no joke. It was literally. I would wake up and be stressed out to look at Facebook and Twitter, because I knew there was going to be another story change which had to be addressed, and was like, okay, do we take this one or do we not?
Right.
We add it to the pile of 1,000 freaking stories that we're already telling.
Poor Brett and Steven. They had great segments that had been lots of work put together that they had to abandon because no, this is irrelevant.
The first solid cut of it where I was like, okay, I'm happy with this, was 3 hours. And so then we're like, well, this is going to fly with anybody. So Steven and I went, and by the way, Steven too should get kudos in this. Steven's the editor. He's been on both films. He's also a producer.
Steven's he just is the quiet guy. He doesn't like doing interviews.
What's his surname? Steven
Green.
Yeah.
Okay. Did he edit The Union?
Yes.
Yeah, he edited both. And he's my business partner. I've been with him since school. We went to film school together. And he's the quiet guy in the background. I'm the medium quiet guy.
Right.
And then Adam's the
the loud and obnoxious aggressive one.
Hey, but there's something to be said for that. Like Adam pushes these things through harder than anybody I've ever met. Like his ability to just keep going, and just no matter what, where we're sitting there going, okay, let's pack it in. Let's go do a reality series for a bit or something. It's just like, no, he keeps pushing, and the ability to connect the dots that. With his social networking, that was a big difference this time in getting bigger guests. Right. Was utilizing the respect that we had from the first film. Adam went out and found people and talked to them and then gained their respect through the interactions. And then all of a sudden we have Richard Branson, Snoop Dogg,
and
all these huge
let's talk about guests here. Who's the coolest guest? We got.
You can't do that. They're all cool. And they're all cool in different ways.
We got Snoop Dogg, we got Wiz Khalifa, we got Joe Rogan, you got Richard Branson. I mean, there's tons of cool people on here.
Yeah. There's so many of them that, we talked before the podcast started that, a lot of them we heard on podcasts, and then we're like, fuck, we got to get that guy, right? They have a great perspective. Graham Hancock, Cara Santa Maria were two of them that there's no favorite guest. There's ones that you like. I mean, Richard Branson, to give us 45 minutes of his time, especially, he's probably the most shock when everyone's like, he's in it. He sat down with you. Like, you guys interviewed him. We're like, yeah, he gave us, and people are just down, they're like, well, how the fuck did you ever get to him? And that goes back to what Brett was saying, is that we have to give a major shout out to our local UK producer, Jason Reed, who is just an amazing guy. Yeah. He had been a fan, and he'd been contacting me for the union for years, right? For probably since 2009 or 10. Just writing like, hey, it changed my life, it changed my family's perspective. Those are how you can see the tangible things. We just got an email yesterday that I let Brett see, that this guy said, your movie, hands down, was the definitive factor that changed me. And I know the guy that runs Dallas Fort Worth Normal, and also Suffolk Normal, specifically Suffolk Normal was started, which now has 3,000 members, because they watched our film at the Virginia Film Festival in 2007, and then they wanted to get more politically active, and now it's a major part of their life. And they're like, no, Adam, the union didn't just help, it was the deciding factor.
For people that don't know, what's Normal? National
Organization to Reform Marijuana Laws. They've been around since 1967, I believe, if you want to get a date. So it was in the 60s and 70s. So they're all over. They've been a strong force for many years, because they were a lot of lawyers and people that were really smart looking at the legal system and the flaws with it. So, and then you had LEAP, which I think is probably because
the new kid on the block, but
law enforcement against prohibition. How can you argue against cops that were there fighting it? They saw how they were doing more damage to society by taking kids out of college that were smoking weed, giving them criminal records. Like, they're smoking weed in their dorm room, and then we arrest them and put them and give them a criminal, even if they don't actually go to jail. We've ruined their scholarship. We've taken them out of the education system. We've given them, like, how is that helping society? And then we pay for it as taxpayers. Like, we pay for them to then go through the fumbling system.
A huge check. Yeah. So you were saying Jason Reed, he is a great connector.
Yeah. So he was the one that reached out, and, he got politically active because of our film, and then he's the only president of any LEAP chapter that isn't law enforcement, that isn't ex-law enforcement, because the way he approached it was so sensible. He got in touch with he's the one that got us everyone. He's the one that got us Professor David Nutt. He's the one that got us Howard Marks. In the UK, got us all he's the one that got Richard Branson. He's the one, all those people, Steve Rolls, all the great people we got, other than Graham Hancock, because we got... I remember how we got his.
I think we just wrote him.
Yeah, just hunted him down through the podcast.
Yeah.
But
I think Jason hooked me up with Annie Michon on our show.
Yes, he works closely with Annie Michon.
Yeah, they're really good friends.
Yeah, no, he's and you want to talk about a guy that's like the new age that you call of like podcasts or connecting through the internet, where, like you said earlier, where you want to help. He never asked for anything, right? When you deal with other people and producers and stuff, like, almost everybody wants something. They make a phone call, they're like, I want producer credit, I want back end, I want this, I want that, I want that. He never asked for anything, which made I wish, if I could, but the way contracts, which I would have made him, like, literally my name as producer and him right underneath. He worked his ass off, and he's got health issues, right? That makes it very tough for him to do these long hours and travel and put in this stuff, right? He suffers from it's not actually fibromyalgia, it's like another thing very similar to it.
Yeah.
And he saw, because he'd never even left his place for an overnight trip in like 10 years, because he struggles, he gets so, but when we did Richard Branson's interview, he's like, well, I have to go try to come there for that and have a picture and do all that. So he came, and you could see it, because we did his interviews the next day, and his eyes were really red from pain. You can see it in the film, because that's when he is interviewed in it too.
So you had tons of grassroots help for this.
Tons. Like, that's where you can, as hard as we work, there was so much help and so much that goes into all these things, it's to a film. And I think any passion project, that it's really tough to try to thank everyone that helped you along the way, especially when we have so many people like yourself. You've helped promote it. Anytime I'm like, hey, Brian, can you retweet this for me and stuff? You're like, done, no problem. Like, it seems small, but those help projects like us a lot, right? When people do those things for us, that can be the like, sometimes when you would retweet things is when a movie reviewer from the UK is like, hey, send me your link, I want to see it. Right? Like, things like that and then a review by the right person can get you a distribution deal or do something like that. So it's like, what seems to cost somebody or take nothing of somebody does so much for us. Like, and same with all these people sitting down to interview with us, right? Joe Rogan and Snoop Dogg and Wiz Khalifa and Be Real from Cypress Hill. None of them asked for any money.
Right.
They all did it for free.
That's big.
Huge, right? Like, so that they would do that. And like, it's amazing. I'm getting emotional now, because it's when you sit back and just be like, fuck, how far we came, even with all the stress that we're going through now. It's pretty cool. So many people have rallied behind us to help us. Like,
again, that comes from your energy, guys. I think that comes from you and what you're trying to put out there, and the tone of what you put out there. Because it's not the Brett and Adam show. It's we're making this.
It's fun.
That's so awesome to hear. Like, just before, like, that is Ryan. Like that. Thank you very much for saying that, because we try hard to do that. So it's really cool that if that's what people are getting,
one of the things
cool.
I was going to say, because you keep mentioning the podcasts, and actually I would thank you to like you and Joe Rogan, because you guys are probably the only podcast that I listen to. But you guys were actually really good screening processes for interviews for me. It was like that way I knew like Graham Hancock was one. It was like, oh, he's fucking good. He's got to be on this. It was like, oh, and he answered that way. Okay, I got to make sure I got to, ask that. Nice. And then not necessarily Graham, but with some other people, you could be like, oh, well, maybe next time or on something else. So podcasts were actually really critical. Even YouTube stuff, like Amazing Atheist had on, he does stuff with Howard Bloom. Howard Bloom's phenomenal. He's a mass behavior expert. Yeah. Howard, every single interview was like journeying into a new world. Like Howard Bloom took us into the whole picture. It was like, okay, let's take emotion out of this. Let's look it out as a human species and how we function and how it relates to other animals on Earth, and how this is actually a course of Mother Nature taking place and kind of, trying to figure itself out right now, to Cenk Uygur, right, from the Young Turks, who takes us into the world of the media and how things function on major news networks, and then how the internet got affected by that. So every single interview was like this massive journey into somewhere else. But
I'm getting excited, man. I want to see this.
Oh, it's crazy. We go all over the place.
And then the podcasts, like we were bringing, like there's just because you can get this honesty, and because sometimes people can have amazing credentials, right? They're like, holy, this guy's up, but just their personality, their delivery's not there, right? Like nothing against them, just they're kind of stale. They don't have that. But other people have, like, and you can see it with Ed Burns, right? Someone that has a movie background, his pauses and the way he makes you think, and then he kind of challenges me as the interviewer, Brett as the director, in this way of thinking, and puts you in these positions, and you're just like, oh, like he's money, right?
Well, he lets you think, and he also, because you'll get in interviews, and it's probably the way I speak right now, but you'll get in interviews where guys just, they talk so quickly that you can't cut around it. There's no drama to be pulled from it, because you're sitting there literally, you have to inject pauses in their thing just so people have a breather and they can actually, digest what they're thinking. But with somebody like Ed Burns, it's just like, no, he leaves you, he lets you ponder, and then he brings you right back in, right when you
that's a skill. I think Hancock's good at that as well.
He's so good at that. You'll see in the he's good at that too. But that's where
Howard Bloom was another one like that.
He gets you riled up, and then he gets like, there's this time, we had with the union, because we were nobodies, and we're still nobody, but we were really nobodies then, getting in, challenging a very tough issue. To get critical thinkers to interview with you, were like, nah, we don't know who you are, and you want to do a pot doc, and you want, no, fuck no. Or if you could, they were kind of jaded. This time, like we had, which puts more pressure on Brett and Steven, we had a plethora of amazing people that knew how to do interviews and would deliver. So like when the editing room came, it was like, oh, how do I cut out this section's good and this section? They all do it so well, and then you have to pick. And
it was months of that, months of just even categorizing.
Let's talk about this process real quick. Now, you write the movie. You kind of sketch out where you kind of want to arc this plot and what you want to talk about. And then you think about the people you want to interview. And how many people did we interview here?
40, I think.
43. I think it was roughly 43. That's very organic though. That'll shift and shape as we're doing it. I'll go, we'll do something, and then it'll lead to another interview that I didn't even think of. But I think there's almost, for myself, who knows if this is the right process or not. For myself, there's almost 3 films I end up doing. There's the initial one I write, which is a film in itself. Then there's the one we shoot. And then there's the one that's made in the editing room, and that's the one that you finally see. And for me, it's like, I think there's a picture online. I have an entire floor covered in all the ideas of cue cards that I sit there and I rearrange and I go, okay, here's my main topics.
This is really cool. It's as big as this room.
Cards, I can imagine.
And so I just constantly am shifting, okay, well, why is this important? What's that, is that important? And then the process was, okay, now we have the footage, now we need to categorize all this, just to even start thinking about how you're going to actually make it into a story. And then you slowly start whittling it down more and more until you get it to something where you can actually start connecting all the dots. And then I'll write all the narration that will go in between. And
is he doing the voiceover for
and
narration?
then Adam's got a great voice for the narration. So I always
a very friendly voice.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, and it's got that deep,
Even in the union, I was listening to it now, and you kind of have that kind of, deep but friendly, but kind of, I don't know.
And he's got the right delivery for it.
Well, here, you guys are both being kind. Brett had to work really hard to get me to do. if we talk about this time, I hadn't done voiceover for a long time. So the first day we go, and we were in a proper like sound recording studio this time, whereas last time we just did it in a basement with a mic and like a puffer thing in there. So this time we start, and I couldn't get the tone. And like, you can ask Brett, I was getting, so we were in there for about an hour, and I couldn't get the first fucking sentence right. Brett's like, politely on the thing, he's like, could you, okay, like, Adam, let's just try, just relax, like, just say it, like, you know, you're trying to, like, I was like, oh my God, this is gonna, and we had paid, not, like, actually, kudos to what Brett was able to do there, is that there's not a lot of, for how much information, this is very minimal voiceover.
Yeah, it got
right?
cut back a lot on this one.
Like, which is, just shows how well the interviews and what the talent brought, which is great, because when you're doing something that's so controversial like this, the less voiceover and stuff you can have, the better.
It's more just there for posing questions this time versus,
like,
you know.
But I was struggling, and Brett had
to get the tone right. It's hard.
It is, well, and as well, I think a lot of people in the industry that I've worked with, they tend to look at narration in the reality show sense, which is there's this kind of energy that they think exists there that doesn't really exist. And for me, the critical thing is, okay, let's be as natural as possible in how we're doing this, because that's what this movie is. It's us contemplating.
But that's your style, I think. Your style is to present the information and let people make their decisions. And one thing that nobody wants, including the American public or any moviegoer, they don't ever want to be told how to think about something.
Exactly.
Especially they're way smarter now, right? So they catch on that shit.
And I think people just subconsciously feel that. And as soon as they feel like you're being preached to or you're being told what to think, and that's where the beauty of your, the film is that I've seen of you guys is you put it out there, and then you can, isn't this pretty obvious?
Exactly. Well, and the key element that we had this time that we didn't have last time was we had access to a lawyer who was able to take us through the process of doing fair use footage.
Yes.
So this time, I could actually take footage that was of the other side and place it in there. So you could literally, like, it's just you have the one side going, and then you hit them on the other side, and you go, up to you now. What do you think the difference is? I don't know. If you still agree with that, then okay, let's go on to the next point. But you just constantly do that. Then the other critical part of the process as you're creating the story for myself is I have to be entertained the entire time that I'm doing it. Meaning, like, if I'm sitting there dragging at any point. So as I go, and with Steven's also part of this process. If there's a part, actually a big part of the process, we both sit there and we go, okay, is this part lagging? Like, if that happens, it doesn't make it through, and it's either it goes because maybe the point wasn't strong enough anyways. But if it's a really strong point, I got to rework it until it's something that's going to be entertaining. And I feel like I've come more from the YouTube generation, even though I'm older. So I have this need for information in a quicker sense than the traditional model. And so, like, our film is really quick cut, and it's a high pace that caters more to the younger generation, and the older generation sees it and they like it, but they're not quite as used to it because documentaries tend to be drawn out a long time.
I think that's smart to err on that side, because you guys come out in Vimeo on the 17th, and the people might be watching it on a desktop, and on a desktop you're competing with. I might want to check my Facebook now because this doc is getting a little slow.
Absolutely.
So you gotta
Brett,
really
I honestly think Brett was ahead of the curve against 99% of doc filmmakers, because he used that technique in the union. And then I know some good filmmakers that we're friends with, our good buddy Pete McCormick, who directed Facing Ali and I Am Bruce Lee, he commented on how he loved it. He's like, I love the quick takes and that, right? Like, and they got shortlisted for an Academy Award with Facing Ali. So he had a shortlisted Academy. He was like, dude, I love that. I hadn't quite. So he actually integrated some of that into I Am Bruce Lee. You see some of the quick cuts and some of the, like if you see some of the way they did it. I'm not sure, I never heard him totally say like I got that, but he'd complimented on how you did that, and then you see some of that in I Am Bruce Lee, some of these quick cuts, and I thought it worked great for that film.
How many people made it from the 43 you interviewed? I mean, did some people?
Every single one.
I think everybody got something.
Yeah, they might be very quick.
Was that important that everyone you interviewed made it in?
You try to.
I mean, does it get to be too many faces? I mean,
it does. You got to be careful in how you do it. It's got to be appropriate, and it's got to. It's
like the housekeeper shows up and she's got an opinion, and then the plumber's
exactly.
Because you're like, who are these people?
It's got to make sense. As long as it makes sense, you get away with it, right? Like, as long as they're there for a point that is relevant to the topic and it keeps the flow going. At least for myself, I found that I was all right with it as we would go through with it and just let that go. Like, there's a few people that maybe have 4 or 5 sentences in it, but they're making really valid points. So It works. I see what you're saying though, and I can see how that would.
I'm surprised.
Really
I thought it was going to be
awkward.
like half the people or something. But I mean, you know, people know going in that they're doing this and they're giving their time. And
Exactly.
I would like, although no one wants to get cut out of a movie. So you mentioned this tug effort, and I want to talk about it because I saw it pop up on the Culture High website. Nice, and it basically says if you want it screened in your
it's
in your
a great
hometown
thing, and I'm so depressed because literally since the buzz today, we're getting all these requests from all over the UK and Europe, and they're not in Europe yet, which is so. But it's a great platform where what Tug does is essentially it's a social media site like Facebook or Twitter. You quickly log in. You don't have to create an account, but you log in. You pick the film that you want to try to bring to your local theater. You put in your zip code, and it'll give you the theaters that Tug already works with. And they'll say, okay, pick your first choice, and then pick 2 backups, because it can't always, not all theaters are down for a day and date release, which is what we're doing, where it's available on Vimeo for a higher price, but it's also still in theaters, right? Some theaters haven't adapted that new age where they're like, fuck it, it's either in the theater or it's on VOD. We don't do both. But for indie films, you can see that. Like, we don't have $20 million marketing budget. So even if it's in the theater, it's in 2 small screens and small areas. The only promotion it's getting is through social media. So these Tug events are kind of the way that they give us our media. So you put in your zip code, you put in the theaters, Tug will then do all the heavy lifting. They contact the theater with the dates that you suggested as an average fan. Come back to you and say, yeah, we've got this date at this theater or this date at this theater. Then they give you a threshold of tickets where they say, okay, if you want the bigger theater, it's 100 tickets, or if you want the more indie theater, it's 70 tickets. And then if you hit the ticket threshold, boom, the theater, you then brought the movie to your local theater, and now essentially you invite your friends and family, and boom, the theater's on the big screen. You had an impact in bringing the film you want to your area. And Tug gives you 5% of the ticket sales 30 days after a successful campaign in reward for doing so. So not only the money part is cool, or you get to kind of control what you're getting to see nowadays, what I love about it is that for myself, my favorite part, like tomorrow, I'm so excited, is screening with friends, family, and peers, and seeing them go through this emotional roller coaster, seeing them laugh at certain points, and you're going to see cry at certain points tomorrow and get really mad. It is my favorite. It's essentially what fucks me and why I can't do anything else. Like, I can't do things that would make substantially more money. But when you're sitting in there in theater and you see your work affecting an audience of 50, 100, 200 people, it's tough to going back to a job that you just get a paycheck for, right? Just a numbers thing on a piece of paper. So the audience gets to do that. They get to kind of be the filmmaker, because you get to say, like, if we had it, like London Reel could host their own, and then you can also add a donating function where everyone can donate an extra couple dollars a ticket or $5 a ticket and raise money for their local charity. So really, in North America, we should have 200 screenings. Every normal chapter in Students for a Sensible Drug Policy should bring the film, raise money for their local donation, so they're educating their community, they're bringing local leaders, great venue to bring them to, right? Make a publicity thing out of it. Yeah. Bring local leaders, bring your local politician, bring your local mayor, bring them there, because when they see it on the big screen and see the whole audience go through it, laugh, cry, see it all, it's way more impactful than if you gave them a DVD or if they watch it on the screen. So we get to share that with the audience. It's fucking awesome. You get to be like a filmmaker for a day. You get to be like, I took the initiative. I got 10 of my friends to invite 5 of their friends. We got the 50 ticket threshold. It's now in my theater in Podunk, Kansas, or Nebraska, or wherever you want. You can make it happen. So when Tug came, I was like, this is the fucking way of the future for theaters. And then there's no cost. If you don't hit the ticket threshold, nothing happens.
Right.
You don't get charged. There's no bill. You don't get nothing. It just, unfortunately, your event didn't happen. But if you do, then you can sit there, you can call it, even if you want to call it by your name, like the Adam Scorgie presents, the Kansas premiere of this film.
All right, so if you're listening or watching this and you're in the States somewhere, in any town, you don't have any excuse here not to make this happen, because this can be like basically your Culture High premiere, and you can get all your people there, you can get grandma, you said you were just in Canada and all the grandmas came out, and then plus, if you're even in any kind of a local movement, if you're listening to this show, you're probably on the same mindset as Adam and Brett. So if you really believe in pushing this forward, this is like a no-brainer, man. I love it.
Opportunity that never existed before.
Again, it's like it fit perfectly with the way the union was discovered, the way the Culture High was financed.
The theme of all of the stuff.
Like you said, watching it with a group of like-minded people in a big screen is that's a dramatic moment. That's performance art, really. It's not.
And Brett created it. We all did. We created it for the big screen. It's shot not like a regular doc. I go see hundreds of docs every year. Other docs, they're not made for the big screen. You can watch them. This one, Brett takes 2.5, 3 hours to set up his lighting. Like, some of these shots look immaculate on the big screen on a DCP. And if you want to make that impact, trust me, I'll tell you right now, it's the same with buyers for a film. It's why we always try to get them to the festival screening, because when they're there and they see an audience laughing, crying, having emotional reactions to your film, of course they're going to be more enticed to buy or pay attention. If you give someone that you think is important to watch a film like ours, a film of purpose, and you give it to them on a DVD or a screener link, and then, like you said, they've got their phone beeping and they're listening, this is a film where if you miss 2 to 3 minutes of some nuances of what somebody's saying, you're missing a vital piece, right? So if you look at your phone and you're going like this, and it's not going to have the same impact. Whether it's a buyer for the film, they're going to be like, yeah, I kind of didn't like it, whatever, maybe it's got some celebrities, we'll push it. It's not the same. If I get you in there for 2 hours and you watch it and you listen and you're not on your fucking phone and you're not distracted, it will have an impact on you. I'm not saying it's going to change your perspective completely, but what it will do, I guarantee, after what Brett's delivered, is it will get you thinking, and it will get you to go look more. It'll get you to go do more homework, which is what every great documentary does, right? Gets you to come to your own informed decision. If you are going to do research right after the film, or a week after, or a couple weeks after, you're like, fuck, you know, that film is still like, I gotta look that up. I gotta do more research. That's what
which is what we hope they do. That's the thing. Right. We don't know everything. This is just an opinion, right?
Fuck, I know nothing. I'm finding it. Every time I think I know something, I know nothing.
I don't want to wait 24 hours to see this film. I want to see it now. What's the rest of the year like for you guys? When can you kind of actually take a rest? Are there more film festivals coming up in the States? Are there more things happening? Or when is some of your hard work kind of done and you can kind of let, hopefully, the rest of us take a little more?
It immediately goes into the next. Like I'm right now,
is this for the next year for the next film festival?
Well, no, it's not just this film. It's like you kind of like have to start staggering your films as you do them. So we're trying to get another one going right now, which is called Ice Guardians, which is the enforcers in the NHL and their stories. At the same time, we're trying to bring in some kind of income, so I'm trying to do a music video in the meantime, and then on top of that, we try to do all the promotion and the interviews, and so I'm off to Poland after. So we do this. I head to Iceland to do the second half of the festival for us. And then I go home, shoot a music video, then I head out a couple days later, then I'm in Poland for 5 days at Warsaw. While I'm there at 3 a.m, I'm doing interviews online for like Young Turks and stuff like that on Skype and stuff like that. Adam's flying down to LA, so I don't think that exists, the pause part.
Yeah, the pause. Because I literally go from here, like I just arrived from Reykjavik, Iceland yesterday, came here like right away. Like you and me had said this, I was like, I can't wait to come back on the show because I don't shut up. People listen to my last one. So I was like, I'm coming in to do London Reel, do this. Premiere tomorrow. I leave the following morning. I go back I actually leave on October 3rd. I arrive in Kelowna on October 3rd, the evening, for the premiere in my hometown in Kelowna, BC, Canada, October 4th, which is going to be a real emotional one because we cover the subject of cannabis oil, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners are now looking into, and the benefits for epilepsy, and they're seeing cancerous tumors, and a whole bunch of things, right? And in my hometown, there's a story that got pretty nationally known about a young girl named Kyla Williams. And she has an organization, Quest for Kyla. So we did, I had some people approach me about sponsoring the event in Kelowna because I was given a Kelowna screening by Phase 4. They said, go ahead, it's your hometown, you go do the screening, because I always give one back to the town that supported me through the years. So I always get them to try to have the BC premiere. So I go back and do it, and we raised, because I was giving a large portion of the ticket proceeds, and we did an expensive ticket price at $30, but I included sponsorship with drinks at the after party and other things like that, and we sold 250 tickets in 5 days. People were so on board to help. So look, Kyla and her family are all coming, and her grandfather was actually former RCMP, and he was one of the guys that was totally against all this, and now he's seen his daughter going from hundreds of seizures a day to only a couple seizures a week, and he's like, oh my God, I was wrong. I looked at this incredibly wrong for the longest time. And now seeing it happen to my family member and seeing the benefits, like he's like, maybe the science isn't all there, but I'm seeing it with my granddaughter. And when it's my granddaughter's life or death, I will fight it to the end. So they're all going to be there that night, and we're presenting them with a big check and everything. So it's going to be pretty emotional. Wow. Like I leave right from this one, which is going to be I'm probably going to cry tomorrow. Like I'm going to hide it and be up there. But like the overwhelming when it all ends and you see everybody else going through emotion, like me and Brett were saying, we get really overwhelmed just because we know how hard it worked. We put into this in the 4 years.
4 years, yeah. Will there be a third?
No.
I'll say this though. This is exactly what we said after the last one. We're never doing another fucking drug movie.
Yeah,
and then you see what happens here. The answer right now is no. But there's a lot of people that have talked about that. There's people who've actually asked us to do an ongoing type series of this too, where we continuously cover it. So right now, probably not, but I don't know. Maybe
a series like we need to get we need to be able to be secure in what we're doing. That's the big thing right now. That's a step. Is that our films are widely known on the internet and getting quite critical acclaim. But we really haven't hit that part where, our families and stuff are, and I'm not here to whine and stuff. Like, I hope people get, we love what we're doing, but like Brett and I, it's really at that point now where it's like, man, we need to make just like a decent living so we have stability. And then who knows? Yeah, if we're like right now we say no just because we're so exhausted, and just kind of enjoying the festival and the fun part of 4 years of putting that but it's come up a lot where people are like, well, you got to make a trilogy.
I feel like the fighter, after a UFC fight, the guy just got in the fucking 5-round battle.
His face is all...
He's like, I just wanted, and then the thing they asked him is,
who's up next?
And he's like, holy shit, can I just
bring
bathe in this?
It's like, man, can I just carry the belt out of the ring first, right? Or can I just enjoy my? So. I mean, if the right thing came together and our schedules worked and we could all survive and support, I mean, you'd be stupid not to if, again, the fans were there. And
I think there'd have to be something significant that actually changes in it too, like something worthy of, like, whether it gets fully legalized, whether it goes down the other route,
or
something
go into the
major
psychedelic division or something, or
going to make it beyond what we've already done. Because after these two films,
I don't know how you cover pot anymore. Being modest, if you're doing another pot film, it's gonna be tough to cover anything different after these two.
A lot of people don't know that you don't really smoke weed, right?
Yeah. I mean, I certainly have, and the times I have, I knew how to inhale, right? Like, I got that part right. But no, I don't smoke on a regular basis. My drug of choice is caffeine. That's why I crushed 3 bulletproofs when we were in here. That is my, I'm not even much of a drinker for a guy that used to own a nightclub and everything too. Like, I enjoy the occasional beer. Like, when I'm back home, I don't drink at all. And I don't smoke, but I mean, that's ultimately what the films are about. Is it's not about whether you use the drug or not. It's your, free sovereign individual should be able to expand their consciousness as they see fit. I'm stealing Graham Hancock's stuff here, right? Because he's saying, I just love the way he put it, right? Like, if you're an adult, if you're not harming someone else,
he sat in, so.
If you're not harming somebody else and you're not doing damage to other people's property, it is, you should not be able to say. And in fact, if you do say one is wrong and one is right, then you, in fact, are being a criminal, pointing the finger one way or the other. And we go into this in the film. I'm not giving any spoilers about how, but yeah, I'm not. And of course, there's been rumors that if Snoop comes to our LA premiere, that's the time when you have a choice to do the bucket list. And I mean, if Snoop asks you to smoke, I'm pretty sure I'm going to inhale. And I'll pull the Barack Obama line, I inhaled. That was the point, right?
See, there's a lot of people on the film that had never smoked, like Steven, the editor.
Yeah.
He tried once and he said he didn't get high.
He didn't know how to inhale. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, the bucket list smoke. Actually, I had the chance to smoke with Joe Rogan and I didn't. So.
Oh, no. Oh. We all make mistakes.
That's why I was able to speak on the podcast.
You did podcast, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that makes sense.
I would have been a mess otherwise. So, all right, so basically, we need to get you your budget back, which means October 17th, people need to go to Vimeo, watch it there, get involved with Tug, get that going, and then in the future, make sure it gets on Netflix and just kind of keep rallying.
Yeah,
basically get everyone to see this film.
Yeah, just, and I get it. If you can't afford it, go down the road, when it becomes, or maybe buy the whole bundle, because we're looking at doing a bundle package on Vimeo. It'll be, because the way Vimeo does is you create pages, kind of like a Facebook page. And this is what's nice about it, is that every month you get a PayPal report where it's being ordered, goes right to your account. So you're cutting out all the distributors that do, which is scaring a lot of them, right? Because it's because
has this really been done with a big release? I haven't heard of movies coming out on Vimeo before. So
no. Vimeo just launched this program.
Okay.
They actually
the game.
Did you think about doing it on YouTube? Because they have a pay-per-view service.
They do. The only reason this came up, we were looking at a totally traditional release, but I actually spoke in my first panel at Sundance, which was a tremendous honor last year, and it was Hollywood Suites meets Silicon Valley, or Hollywood meets Silicon Valley, and it was how digital age is. And I met this guy, Marcus Lovingood, that he had approached me through the union, seen the Kickstarter success, and he was kind of like, how these things trickle down later, right? And he was just like, man, you guys did amazing things. And And he invited me to this panel, and like I said at the panel, I was like, I'd like to think I'm talented enough that I'd have a career if it wasn't for the internet, but I don't know if I would, because my whole career has been social media, connecting with the audience, doing it that way. So afterwards I had explained, they said, well, tell us about like your success and your films and what you've done. And just explaining to the audience, and one of the curators of Vimeo on their new platform, he was there selling it. He was sitting next to me on the panel. He comes up, Jason, he's like, we need to talk, right? Because he's like, with your following and what you did, like this is exactly, and I love Vimeo's approach, because they're kind of like coming all from the filmmaker thing, where they're not about spending all this money in advertisement to build this incredible platform like iTunes. They want to have superior content drive their platform instead of a great platform to try to go against. So like, if we get superior content, people are going to come to us, and they're going to come to our platform, and they're going to come there because that's where they have to get it, right? And they're taking care of the filmmakers, like 90-10. Like even when I said that, people thought it was bullshit. They're like,
that's incredible.
They're like, how can they be giving you that? That doesn't make sense. How do they make their money? And I was like, well, I don't know. You got to ask them that question. But that's what they give you, is 90%. And it's so nice now and refreshing, because the film world has been this thing where you bring on a sales agent. I'm not here to bash sales agents, because I have sales agents that are friends, but you know, they charge you this $15,000 marketing cost. And you're like, and literally in the contract it says unauditable. You can't even ask what they spent it on. So you're like, okay, that's a lot of money just to spend, and then they take it to the markets. And then I've been there with them. I've sat at AFM and I've seen it's on a board of 20 other films. And on that board, there's films with big name actors that were $5 to $10 million. And then down in the corner is your documentary, right? So, but everybody gets charged a $15,000 fee, right? And I'm like, but who gets pushed more? The $10 million movie that has much more to recoup, or the documentary that's a tough sell anyway? And usually your film gets thrown in bundles, like, oh, we're selling France. Oh, they really want this horror movie, but buy this one for $5,000 and buy this one for $5,000, and then you have your marketing fees that they charge you, your sales agent's commission, everything. So you get $2,000 for an entire country. And I'm like, well, that's only 200 downloads at $19.99 or at $9.99, which is a fair price for a film, right? Where I'm kind of like, well, that's not that much to get a whole. That's how you sell countries for. Countries for docs are sold for like $1,000 to $3,000, like a whopping deal international. Like that would be like fucking Bowling for Columbine, hit it out of the park.
Right.
Whereas I'm looking on, like, if we put it to Vimeo at $9.99, that's 15,000 downloads worldwide.
Right. So this is the way to equalize things.
And then you don't have all the fees. And then even when you make that deal, like you said, then it's like, okay, well, we're going to, because we have these other films that we don't want to damage their release. So we're not even, we'll give you the paper, but then we're not going to release your film till February, March, when we kind of have our slow calendar. And then we're going to do our traditional release, which doesn't connect. We don't have, like, fortunately enough in the culture, we do have some celebrities, so you can connect that way. But they're going to do their generic platforms, their generic releases. They're not, and this film connects more with an ungeneric release, right? Like, do tug platforms, connect with the audience, let people push it themselves, let people put it, you know, so it just kept seeing like, man, it's going to cost a lot of money to do it that way. And then we're not seeing the benefit. Like, we've worked too hard, where it's like, oh, great, you sold it in France and we get $500 after everything, and now that country's gone. Or great, you sold it for $100,000, but they're not going to release it for 8 months, so people are going to download it for 8 months. And then when they do release it, then it's only paper. And then the way the distributors usually pay you is like, okay, $100,000, we're going to give you $20,000 upon first date of release. Then 60 days later, we'll give you 30% more. And then after we've done a run for 8 months. So you're looking 2 years before you collect that $100,000 anyway, after all those fees and everything. You're finance guys, so you're looking at it, you're like, man, that's a long time of drag out your money, right? Yeah. But that's how they do it.
Right.
So it's just like, it's instant, it's there. And I think a fair price. I think that's fair. Like, I think, you know, if you look at the comedy specials, they're only an hour. Ours is 2 hours, $10 worldwide, high definition on any platform. You can watch from your phone, iPad, like your TVs. A lot of them now have Vimeo incorporated right into the smart TV, so you can watch it there. It's 1080p full high def, not the fake high definition that's only 720. It's 1080 on there. We just uploaded it for another day to make sure it was. So I think it's fair. I like giving content for a fair price, and I think people, you know, if you, like we talked earlier, if they don't have to break down a wall to get it at a fair price, I think a lot of people are willing to support. Like, you've kind of seen a resurgence in music on iTunes. It's kind of come back.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm going to get a copy and play it for my family, you know, so they can have it. Just a bit of advice before we finish, guys. What do you say to the documentary filmmakers or wannabe guys that are watching? If there's one piece of advice, I'll start with you, Brett.
Yeah,
of what you tell them if they want to make a documentary. Because, you know, you guys are very inspirational to a lot of people out there. What would you tell them?
I'm so full of negativity. Come on, some positivity. For From my standpoint, I would say the critical piece is you have to find something that you're actually passionate about as far as a topic. Because
passion will take you through all those horrible
times. It'll
times.
flow through everything you do. It'll take you through the bad times. It'll make it more entertaining what you're doing, because you have to find something that entertains you. Like when I'm doing a film, I have to make sure that I'm entertained. That's what I rely on. If I'm entertained, then I trust that there'll be a good section of people that'll probably be entertained. If I'm passionate about it, I'm pretty sure there'll be a good section of people that'll be passionate about the topic too. So it's following those things and then just driving that right through all of it. Let it fuel your energy. Let it fuel you through times where it's pretty shitty, and let it fuel you to make the best film you can make, where it's actually tapping into your emotions.
Good advice.
If it's moving emotions around, you're probably doing a good job. Whether you're making people sad or happy, and you're doing it quite a bit, and you take them on a roller coaster ride, you're probably in a good spot.
Good advice. What about you, Adam?
I'm going to go a mix here. I'm going to go, like I said, it really moved me today how you said that we give off that energy. So I think that's really important, that if you're going to be working with people, that you're putting out there what you want to get back, right? Like it's a cliche old saying, but it's true. I mean, when you brought up, it makes me reflect on all the ways that we could have failed and shouldn't have succeeded and shouldn't have been able to tackle these subjects and shouldn't have been able to get interviews with the people we want. But we always put out what we were hoping to get back, right? Professionalism, passion, the right message, not about, just selling out and making paycheck and just like all those things. Like it really has moved me today, Brian, where you said that, where that's come back. So I would suggest really trying to put out there what you want, right? Like, because I get it now with producers and stuff today. Like there's some that just instantly their vibe is just like, fuck, get me away from this guy, right? Like he's just so much like, this is me and I'm awesome and like this is this, and it's just like me and Brett just can't even, like me from my old biker to like I just want to like smack him, right? And just like, and then I think the other thing, which is I'm stealing from Arnold's thing, but I think don't be afraid to fail. Right. I think now that's why, like Brett and I were saying, we're getting a little, just because we've been through, and even with success, we still see how tough it is. But, that naivety that you have early on, where you believe in yourself, that's the only time your ego is good for you, is believing that you can do it. Other than that, ego is only detrimental, right? Like where you get too caught up in your ego or think you're too fucking good to get other people's advice. Ego is detrimental almost every other way other than believing in yourself. So don't be afraid to fail, because if people look at Brett and I's career and be like, holy fuck, those guys did it. They've succeeded on every level. Trust me, if we were to sit here, I could fill pages up with how many places we failed. Losing tax credits on the first film, bad relationships with certain producers. Like there's 100 million ways we could have failed, but we didn't. We just kept going forward. So don't be afraid to fail and really put out there what you hope to get back. And it generally, I've seen it. I posted this on my Facebook the other day saying, like, if you would have told me when Brett and I first met that I'd be going to the Blue Lagoon in Iceland, to London here in London Real, to interviewing people like Sir Richard Branson, Graham Hancock, Joe Rogan, Snoop Dogg, I would have loved that you said that, but I wouldn't have believed you that was all going to happen, right, from diving into this thing. But I think it comes from putting it out there in the right way. I do believe, I really have seen karma come kind of tenfold in the last couple of years, where it comes back. You treat people right, and those favors that you don't think matter do seem to come back.
It's really well put. I think passion is important. I think the other thing you said there was keep professional. And I know you guys are known for, making everything and constantly trying to make everything better and make it look good. And, I know you guys, show up on time and you do everything you say you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And I think people forget that element sometimes, because these days we're being served up, especially in the world of video space. Everyone wants to show you their video. And, let's be honest, people can tell the difference between something well made and not well made, whether it's probably the construction of the story, which I'm going to see tomorrow night, and everything you piece together. So it's like you need that passion and like that professionalism, and channel the good part of your ego, right? Yeah. Channel the part that doesn't want to
just
fail.
The confidence to go forward. That's really the only thing that ego is good for, right? Just the belief in yourself, whether it's a sport, it's a career, whatever, like I can do it, I can persevere, I can make it through. Other than that, ego's detrimental, like thinking that you're too good or thinking that you know it all. Like, Brian, you have built up an amazing podcast platform, but if you got to the point where you're like, well, I don't need to learn any tricks from anybody else or whatever, the first thing you do when we come in here is like, how can I make my lighting better? What do you think of my cameras? Like, that's awesome. That right away, like you want to help somebody like that. You're like, man, you might work, maybe it won't work for you. Like, there's never something that can be, you got to shut that. And thankfully, I think that's why Brett, Steven, and myself have become such, we're now like family, really good friends, is because we all have that about each other, right? We all want to help. Our egos don't get in the way. That way no one's ever like, we're too fucking cool. And
I'd say that's the other piece of advice just from myself that I've experienced over the years is be somebody that people want to work with, because the process is a huge part of it. Like if you're not enjoying the process, man, you're missing out on a big piece of this. And if you have somebody whose attitude is just shit, there's nothing quicker to bring down your production than that, because now you're focusing on the shitty negative energy versus everybody's on board, everybody's having a good time, and everybody's has a goal of making this thing the best it can be. And you can run into that real quick where people are in positions like say the position I was in on this. If you let your ego run in on that, man, you can have a crew that's not down with what you're doing really quick. So you got to be really open to people.
Yeah, no, that's really well said. And, we talked a little bit about podcasts and how, you use podcasts to kind of find some new guests. You use them to kind of vet the guests to see if they can talk. And, it's really strange, this whole podcast phenomenon and the energy that's come with it. And I'm going to have to really go back and thank one of the members of this movie, which is Joe Rogan, because he kind of set the bar early on by saying, I'm not competing with your podcast. I'm not trying to be better than you. Like, and, we forget a lot of these things. He put the long format out, and, when he invited us on his show after we've been doing this for a year. I mean, it was like the strangest thing. It boggled my mind because I felt like I was on Mars sending out signals, out into the universe, and then some planet out there heard us and sent a signal back, and it was just the weirdest thing. And it was just, and he's kind of shown me that, you should take people that have great messages and then just like build them up, and build them up, and then you build them up, and then they build someone else up, and like and it's kind of how I kind of think.
And you have nailed it. Like, that's something I don't think podcasts are getting enough. It's almost something Brad and I have talked about for a doc, where it's like there is a consciousness shift that has been like, it's almost tangible that's come out from podcasts, where there's just a group of people that want to help each other in a way that I hadn't seen before, where, like you said, that like instead of like Joe was so pumped to help all of his other friends do well, like all of his buddies that were the original guys all have their own successful podcasts, and instead of him thinking like, ooh, that's taking away, he was fucking right. So like you said, he wanted to support yours. Like, hey, you're doing a great one over there, I want to support it. Like, he brought me on the film when we were doing on the podcast when we were doing the Kickstarter campaign. He's like, I want to help Adam, I want to see him succeed, I want to like. That's so refreshing in an age where so many people don't want to see you succeed. And it's weird. Like, I tell young podcasters, because they'll message me all the time because they'll see me on this show or Joe Rogan, and I joke because I use like the Jerry Maguire line. They'll try to explain like, hey, I did this interview, this. I want to give that young guy or girl a shot, right? So I'm like, you had me at podcast, right? When you said you wanted to do a podcast, I'm down to help you, man, because guys like you are what helped my career. So if I can help that young guy's career, it pays forward. Good. I hope he becomes a fucking monster. And then when I did the interview, he'll be like, hey, I'm going to help you because you were so cool. And there is definitely something happening with that. And Joe Rogan has really set the bar, with how he has put out that message to help other people that are doing good things and see other good projects push forward. And like, even like we said, like people that we got into our film because we like that approach. And now it's so funny. I meet these guys, like we'll get random tweets or people like, hey, like, I run up, like, you're in town, like, let's meet up for a beer. And I never have a fear because I'm almost like, oh, you're a podcast guy? You're probably cool as shit.
Everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, you're a cool, like, whereas any other time you'd be like, this guy going to be weird. But as soon as they're like, yeah, I'm a podcast guy and listen to it, then you're like, 90% of the time they seem to be cool as shit.
I'm just wondering too if that's partly the nature of what a podcast is because it takes a certain type of person who has the willingness to sit down for 2 hours to actually talk about a subject.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Whereas, if you're kind of a douchebag, generally you maybe have one or two thoughts about whatever it is that you're commenting on, and then you're good to go to the next thing that you're going to shit on. Whereas podcasting tends to be critical thinking, right? And to me, that's not everybody engages in that. And so anytime you hear there is somebody's, constantly doing an hour or two to get into a subject and like really draw out the important elements of it, they're probably a pretty thoughtful individual. And if they really are thinking about something, their ideas might lie in, the realm of sensibility more often than not. of
Yeah, no, that's well said. I hadn't thought about
Yeah.
that. Like in a typical, interview show, you might want to get the guest on to build your profile. But in a podcast, you really have to you're going to bring your souls together for a couple hours, and you're going to open your mind up to what they're saying.
You see it all the time with the interviews on TV, right? Like they get somebody
even
on,
watch them
and
now.
they you can almost see the newscasters in some cases. They're disappointed in the way the question's being answered, and they try to coax them in a certain way because they're needing a certain answer. And with podcasting, I see the exact opposite. It's more like when somebody disagrees with you on a podcast, it's more, oh, that's interesting. Well, why do you actually think that way? Like, I want to understand why you have that thought process. Whereas on TV, you get the 2 seconds, or not 2 seconds, you get maybe a minute at most. They put out their taglines, their lines that they run to everybody, then they're off. That's it. That's all you get with the subject. That's how marijuana's been dealt with over the years with the media.
Well, and then the part two is that when you get someone talking for 2 hours, if they're putting on a facade or there's some image they're trying to uphold, you're going to punch through that in 2 hours, right? If they're on TV for 10 minutes and they're pre-approved questions and this and that about their movie, they can fall under that thing, right? But 2 hours of just talking and the conversation goes here and there, you're going to find who somebody really is.
And I bet you any money that a lot of the people who are full of shit are scared shitless of doing a podcast because they know it's going to expose them.
Yeah,
they know they're going to have to go beyond
some...
just their main taglines. And a lot of them can't even get beyond that because they've never put enough thought to go beyond what it is and why the reasons.
We kind of mentioned it. So Brett does a great section of this in the Culture. You'll see the
Don't let out too much, man.
Get it on Vimeo instead. No, that's true. I've had people turn me down because they don't want to talk for an hour. Some pretty famous people, and they're like, I don't want to talk for an hour. I'm like, it's going to be fine. It goes by really fast. It's a lot of fun. No.
These are easier.
In fact, I find it's never enough time for me because I don't shut up. When everybody's like, we're running out of time. I'm like, what? That's 2 hours already? Where are we?
I know. If you want to hear more about Adam Scorgie's early life, you can watch our previous episode. And then you can hear about the the strip club, the biker gangs, the Hells Angels, and all the other stuff.
Well, we don't need to get into it, but did I tell about the broken jaw story or the bottle over my head story?
The bottle over the head story. It's a really good one, and it's good. Every time I watch Sons of Anarchy now, which isn't that often, I always think Adam. I'm like, that's Adam, and because I know you were thinking about doing something before.
I am. That is.
You got to hear the broken jaw one though, because that maybe not today, but eventually, because that one's really good because it's a hybrid of also being a model in New York, and it actually made his body better for photo shoots apparently.
We'll get into that. No, that was back in the day. I certainly do not model anymore.
That'll be next time. I'm so pumped to see this movie tomorrow. It's just, you guys, I thought you would feel more pressure, but you guys look so excited and so happy about this thing. So that's a cool energy,
Well, like I said, thank you for that. This is where we get to have a little bit of fun here, right? Like, getting into Rain Dance is a big festival for us, right? So it's cool for us to get in and come to London and have your film play at the View Piccadilly, which is a giant theater, and then having all you guys there, part of the journey is like everyone we interviewed now, almost all of them are attending, right? And then people that come with us, so like you guys, like in there going through this emotional journey. So like I know I'm going to be on. I know when this one moment in the film comes, I'm going to be crying just because it's fucking really emotional, and then seeing everybody else reacting and. When people laugh, I can't wait tomorrow. It's going to be a real emotional roller coaster. And like I said, then I leave the next day and I go back to Canada, and there's going to be another one in my hometown. So I get to have a little bit of fun with these parts. I'm glad. I'm excited for tomorrow. It's what keeps me fighting through the tough times of not wanting to continue with docs. Tomorrow is one of the days that I'm like, okay, this is why we do it.
Yeah, let yourself have a little fun tomorrow. It's going to be the coolest premiere ever because I'm going to know like a bunch of these people, and they're all going to be on screen. It's going to be all these
take all the red carpet pictures because they got the nice media wall right there in the Piccadilly wall.
I'm bringing the camera.
Bring the camera.
We're wearing our London Real shirts. We're going to be representing, and I'll be looking at all the future guests I'm going to get. I will. Like you said, you try to I will gladly help any way I can with that. Between you and Jason, you already got me through every single whistleblower we've had on, which is some big names like Annie Michon, and we have like a whistleblower series now with like 5 people. That all came after you showed up here. So I could go on and on about the podcast meme of promoting other people makes everything in the world better, but I won't go on about that. But thank you to Mr. Rogan, and it is true. So there you go, guys. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks
so much.
I guess I'll see you in 7 years for part 3.
If you go with 4, right? Maybe we can do
I'm gonna have a bald head. by then, for sure.
You can see the progression of us being like, oh,
Yeah.
Scorgie got fatter and fatter, and Brett had less
I
and
got
less hair.
skinnier than already I am,
Yeah.
and I have a beard and no hair on the top of my head.
That is funny as
My
hell.
girlfriend will hate me.
If you're listening to us on iTunes, you can see our good-looking faces on YouTube. If you're listening to this now, you can go to Vimeo and watch it. You can go to theculturehigh.com and then get on Tug and get it premiere in your local theater in America. That sounds hype. I don't know why there's not 100 of those already booked, so that hopefully will happen. And I can't wait to see it, guys. I hope you make all this money back, and then the next one's going to be an easy sell. So
Thanks, Brett. I
excited.
appreciate that, and thank you for the comments today, Brett. Like honestly, that it replenishes our passion to go back into it. He said today, I'm more than just coming on and chatting today. I'm moved, man. I'm thankful. Thank you.
I guess you guys don't see it when you're in it.
Yeah.
But for me, that's the most obvious thing you guys do, which is like everybody wants to help you guys succeed. So
that's awesome.
That's
Thank you.
fantastic. As Adam knows, we say it's about the journey on London Real. Wish you guys well on yours. I'll see you tomorrow for the premiere. It's going to be fucking awesome. All the best.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, guys, take care.
What we call reality is in fact nothing more than a culturally sanctioned and linguistically reinforced hallucination.
On London Real, we like to push the envelope on psychedelics.
We went in and we drank ayahuasca, and it was the real deal.
Ayahuasca requires us to confront the truth about ourselves.
And the psychedelic experience is one of the most, clearly the most influential, profound experiences in human existence.
Now we explore dimethyltryptamine.
Pure DMT powder and smoke that, and this is just a direct route straight to the spirit world.
How would we change this culture? And it felt to me like LSD and psychedelics were the way.
London Real presents DMT, before and after.